I've already started Vlogmas and I didn't realise. It's June. And I've started Vlogmas. Every little thing she does is magic. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I read a lot of books. I've been reading a lot of books recently, to the point where I've got 9 unedited videos. I've got like 3 or 4 videos that are uploaded and ready to go live. I'm just well in advance of myself at the moment. Today's book is a Carrie Hope Fletcher book called All That She Can See. So this is the front cover. I had to get it off Google because the Amazon page doesn't actually have the front cover on it for some bizarre reason. So yeah, that is the front cover of All That She Can See. And I'm making my way through Carrie Hope Fletcher books because a friend of mine was just like, have you read any of her books? And it was just like, believe it or not, despite being a fan of her YouTube channel, I have not read any of her books. And so I started off by reading her biography type one. The first one, which was a non-fiction book, which was called All I Know Now. I never reviewed that one for the channel and I don't really know why. And then recently I read On the Other Side, which was her first novel. I'm going through them in order. So I've just finished All That She Can See and I've started reading When the Curtain Falls. She's a nice writer. Anyway, I'm going to read the blurb and then I'll tell you what I thought about it. I said that really weirdly and I don't know why. Cherry has a hidden talent. She can see things other people can't, and she decided a long time ago to use this skill to help others. As far as the rest of the town is concerned, she's simply the kind-hearted young woman who runs the local bakery. But in private, she uses her gift to add something special to her cakes so that after just one mouthful, the townspeople start to feel better about their lives. They don't know why they're drawn to Cherry's bakery, they just know that they're safe there. And that's how Cherry likes it. And then Chase turns up and threatens to undo all the good that she has done. Because it turns out Cherry is not the only one who can see what she sees. Basically, you find out very quickly that Cherry's hidden talent is that she can see people's emotions, specifically the bad emotions or like the negative emotions. So she can see things like anger and loneliness and tiredness, and so completely by accident she finds out that when she bakes, she can put her happy emotions into the things that she makes, and so she just decides she wants to use that for good. So if she sees somebody with a bit of loneliness hanging over them, she can inject something into her cakes to make them feel less lonely. And yeah, she has her very own what they call medlums in the book. She has 2 dads, and one of them was a baker who passed away when she was a young woman, and her other father left when he realised what she could see, basically, and he couldn't handle what his daughter was going through, so he ran away. I'll admit, there were almost times throughout the book where I think the author almost forgot that she had 2 dads, and then it would come back again, and so I don't know if that's just an editing problem, I don't know, or whether it was just a case of, as the author did, kind of forget that they'd painted that at the beginning. I enjoyed the book. I'll pop that out there first. I did enjoy the book, but it did feel like it was split into 2 very different stories. So you've got the story that you hear on the blurb where you find out about Cherry's hidden talent, you find out about how she found out that she had this ability to put what she was feeling into the cake she made, because when she is little she meets a young boy who has a similar who has the same thing as her, basically, and she finds out that there's another guy who can see all these medlums that are attached to people, and he is very loud about what he can see. So he can see that these monsters that are attached to people, because that's essentially what they kind of visualise as. Monsters that get bigger and bigger depending on how strong the emotion is. Yeah, the young boy that she knew in school was taken away after saying quite a lot about what he could see. After that, Cherry thinks, oh, maybe I shouldn't be too loud about what I can see because it might mean that I might be taken away. Then, as an adult after her father passes away. She becomes very lonely. Her own Medlem gets a lot bigger, and so she thinks of loneliness as her companion. So she almost has a friendship with her Medlem, and it's the young boy that was taken away that gives them this name, Medlems. And that word comes back a lot throughout the book in ways which I think do wonder if it was supposed to. There were lots of little kind of unanswered questions going through just a little bit. When Cherry's father dies and she goes into her depression and she becomes very lonely and she doesn't leave the house for, I think it's a couple of years. And then when she does step out of the house, she sees everybody's Medlems and she goes back and she starts baking and she realises that she can influence the way people feel through her baking. She then attempts to change the way she's feeling and realises that it doesn't work on herself. So she's just like, okay, so I can't work on myself, but I can help other people with this talent that I have. And so she starts on what is essentially kind of a cooking tour. She goes to little villages, she does her thing, waits until like everybody seems to be fairly happy and able to kind of move on and are able to kind of keep on top of their own emotions, and then she moves on to another place. And so when she ends up in, is it Portsmouth, she meets somebody on like her first night there who has a very large Medlem, and she entices this girl into her shop to kind of help her with her problems. It sounds really, really weird. So it is a bit of a weird book, but it's got a good heart to it. And then when she meets Chase, and the way she meets Chase is quite impressive actually, because Chase comes into the bakery where she is doing everything, and he's going like, what are you doing, what are you doing? He has a taste of a cake and she's like, oh, have you put confidence in this cake? And she's just like, wait, what? He can taste it, he can see what I can see. And so she suddenly feels a bit less alone, because obviously the only other person she knew that had her talent was taken away when she was a kid. So the fact that she's now met somebody else as an adult who has the same talent as her, but then it then becomes a bit of a turf war when Chase realises what Cherry's doing, because he thought, oh, I'll play her own game. And so he gets a job at the local brewery and starts to put emotions into the drinks. But the thing is, Cherry has done lots of research into how to bake her cakes. She has tasted all of her emotions, basically, and she's made a list of what all the emotions taste like to her. And from when she was grieving for her father, her next door neighbour was a bit of a guinea pig. And so she tested all the different cakes and things on her neighbour and was able to figure out how much of each emotion to put into the cakes to get the desired effect. So she's done lots of research into how to bake these cakes and how to truly help people through her baking. Chase, however, just spits. He just spits his emotions into the glasses when he's working at the brewery. So when Cherry gets a bit of a gusto and she goes in to confront him and she sees him basically spitting into everybody's drinks, she punches him square in the face, which was a great moment. I was just like, yeah, go on, Cherry. It's that turf war between the two of them in changing people's emotions that then leads you kind of into the second part of the story, where you realise that there are regulations for what they are doing. Because obviously Cherry is not the only one with these emotions. She's known at least two other people in her life, from the young boy to Chase, who have this same talent. So if there's at least three of them, there's obviously more. And then she finds out about a group of people that have put rules in place. When their turf war turns into a proper war, where because nobody's coming to the bakery anymore because they're all going to the brewery to get their kicks, their bad Medlems get even bigger because they're not dealing with anything because they're just getting drunk. Cherry then decides to have an event in her bakery where she basically just doesn't care about the measurements. She feels incredibly guilty after she does this. She decides she doesn't care about the measurements, she just wants to get people back into the shop. So she has a bit of a selfish moment when trying to get back at Chase. The aftermaths of that event, where the police are called, that a woman called Happy from the guild, who has no emotions now, she's had all her emotions extracted from her as working for the guild, comes in and says, Cherry, we've been watching you for a while. we want to give you a job because of how you've been researching everything. And Chase, you've just been completely reckless, and we want to give you lenses so that you can't see your emotions anymore because you obviously hate the world. They're impressed with Cherry and how she has researched and how she's been able to kind of balance how she uses that. Because basically their talents are kind of opposite. Cherry can see the bad medlums, Chase can see the good. And you'd think that being able to see the good medlums would make you quite a happy person. It's like, oh, there's so many happy people. No, he gets extremely cynical and he's just like, why are all these people so happy when I'm not happy? And then he also sees the glee from bad people. So we can see bad people being happy about their bad actions, which makes him have a very unfortunate view on the whole world, which, to be honest, you kind of understand why somebody would offer him lenses so he can't see everything, because he's just so cynical of the world. He obviously isn't happy being able to see happy thoughts. So the idea of him being offered lenses so we can't see it anymore makes sense, because they're just like, you cannot deal with what you can see, so here are these lenses. As you go further and further, you realise that this guild is actually not for good. And you see Chase and Cherry almost team up when they realise what's happening. Because they're just like, oh, this isn't us and the guild versus, like, the normal people. This is us versus the guild, who are trying to essentially take our emotions away from us. And yeah, so that becomes the whole second half of the story. I have seen some reviews where they say that second half of the storyline kind of comes out of nowhere. Me, it didn't seem to come out of nowhere, because as you see the turf war kind of getting worse and worse between Cherry and Chase, because basically when they meet, Cherry kind of takes kind of almost an instant liking and disliking to him. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. She loves that she's found somebody who's got the same talent as her, but at the same time, she doesn't like him because of how his own medlums are affecting the way he sees the world. And she wants to help him, but at the same time, she doesn't like him. It is essentially those two stories kind of combined, and it's about halfway, maybe just over halfway into the book, when the guild comes in. It definitely feels like it's that story versus that story, with a slight overlap in the middle when that turf war gets out of control. But then when you look back at the beginning, there were little hints of it. There were little hints of what was to come when you look at what happened to her friend at school who got taken away. Just going to say that. But ultimately, I did enjoy this book. I thought it was quite a clever story. I could see it all in my mind, as I'm a very creative person, so when I read a book I tend to have a movie in my mind of everything playing out. It was very easy to visualise. It was a very easy book to read. I had this experience with her last book where it just seemed, some of it just seemed a little bit clunky, and I'm not sure if it's an editing issue, if it was somebody that was supposed to overview it just missed things. Obviously I've read books before where things have been overlooked slightly. There was a Harry Potter book where I noticed some grammar issues, and it was just like, yeah. For a published book, those editorial issues did seem a bit much. Grammar issues, there was some points when I had to kind of reread what I'd just written because I felt like a comma was in the wrong place and I was reading it wrong. But when just looking at the story, it's a good story. I think it's a publishing issue. Ultimately, I do think that Carrie Hope Fletcher has an incredible imagination. I will say that, you know, parts of the story did feel like it was borrowed from other things that we've seen before, which there's obviously nothing wrong with getting inspired by something else. The book/film Chocolat, it's got elements of that in it. If you don't know the book and film Chocolat, it's basically got a similar thing of people being able to put emotions into food. Hi Harrison. B. A Debbie vlog without an appearance from Harrison the cat. Oh, are you seriously just chilling like that, boy? Okay, we'll just sit like this. I did enjoy this book. It was a clever story, and having finished it you can start to see the kind of the connections going through back to the beginning again. Fair enough, boy, you do you. 336 pages. I read it on Kindle on my phone, so it makes it feel like it's slightly longer. Ultimately, I did enjoy the story, and I think when it comes to the grammar issues, I think you have to look a little bit towards the publisher and some of the kind of the post-editing things, Because the fact is, when somebody is writing something, you don't have to be perfect at grammar and things to be able to write a good story or have the imagination for it, but you do need the help to be able to get that story across so that people can understand what you're writing. And I will say, I am currently reading a book that is done in, I believe it's known to be quite popular in Irish writing, and it's from an Irish author actually. Even though I've actually read stuff by that author before where she hasn't written in this way before. A lot of the grammar is actually taken out. I can't believe you're just sitting here like this, Harry. You very rarely do this. This cat does not sit still usually, so he's obviously just joined the pamper because my niece is here. First time I ever read a book that didn't have any grammar in it was Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson. It wasn't my favourite book, and I wasn't sure if it was because it was the story or because of the fact that it did have that lack of grammar in it. And now having read 2 other books in that similar style, I think it was the story was the problem. Because the book that I'm reading at the moment, I'll admit, it doesn't have a complete lack of punctuation and grammar and stuff like that. It's literally just like quotation marks around dialogue that the book that I'm reading at the moment doesn't have. It is a case of kind of rereading, making sure I know what's the difference between the dialogue and what the character is thinking in their head. Well, that was fun while it lasted. I think the book that I'm reading at the moment is proof that grammar isn't the be-all and end-all when it comes to these kind of books, and that not everything has to be war and peace. I'd say that, I think I'm going to talk about this because I have seen quite a few bad reviews of Carrie Hope Fletcher's books, which was, I think, probably why I was on the fence about reading them to begin with, but ultimately, they're good, nice stories. They're easy to read. It's nothing too strenuous, really. This one does have a slightly darker turn to it. You can see kind of Carrie growing up through her writing, especially compared to her first book where she was like in her early 20s when she did her All I Know Now. But yeah, ultimately, this was a nice book. I can imagine it as like a Channel 4 or a Channel 5 afternoon movie where it's just, you put it on, you can go away, come back and not really miss much of the story. Fairly easy storyline to follow. A couple of grammar issues here and there, but ultimately it's not War and Peace and it doesn't have to be. All That She Can See by Carrie Hope Fletcher. Obviously there is so much about this book that I have not mentioned. What I've mentioned about the storyline is literally the basics. There was a point when there was a mention kind of the timing and how long it had been since certain things have happened. It was like, wow, I didn't realise how quickly this was all playing out. Because when you first read it, I think because you're getting the flashbacks as well, it feels like you're covering a longer time period. And then there comes a point when the guild comes in and they're just like, we've been watching you for 2 days. And it's just like, wait, this is like, all this has only happened in 2 days? But yeah, Carrie Hope Fletcher, All That She Can See. Lovely book. I read this off my Kindle app. I'm sure it's available in other places as well. This one was not on BorrowBox. Carrie Hope Fletcher's books are not on BorrowBox, and I don't know why. If you like magical realism, this is a book for you. Her last book was magical realism as well. That was a bit more subtle until kind of the end. In the final secret of the last book, the magical realism suddenly came out of almost nowhere. But this one, that magic is in there straight away because it's the idea that Cherry can see people's emotions. And I just thought she's very good at describing and painting that picture in your mind. And that's what I want from a book. I want a book that helps to paint that picture so that I can see it all playing out. If I can't see it playing out in my head, that's the point where I'm going to put the book down, because I'm just like, oh. And it's very rare that I don't finish a book. I can only think of ever one book that I just could not finish because I was bored out of my mind. And I'm not going to say what it was. It would have been a while ago, so it would have been pre-YouTube. If I had read it while I was on YouTube, I probably still would have reviewed it. But in this case, it was such a long time ago that I probably can't even remember the name of the book because it was that boring. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Thank you and hello to the new subscribers. It's very nice to see you. Bye, my lovelies.